Welcome to CivilNet. We are in Stepanakert, the capital of Karabakh. Since September 27, Karabakh has been under Azerbaijani attack and Baku is targeting civilians. My guest is Artak Beglaryan. He's the ombudsman of the Nagorno Karabakh Republic. Welcome, Artak.
Thank you.
So there are civilian, as I said, there are civilian victims among the casualties. As a human rights defender and also as a resident of Karabakh, what is the situation in the region for you?
The situation I would consider as humanitarian crisis because since September 27, Azerbaijan is very indiscriminately and intentionally targeting civilian objects and population too. And since then, my office started a fact-finding mission, and yesterday I presented the main findings of our mission so far. Today I will send the details. The details are that so far there are 11 deaths among civilians, more than 60 wounded, not including today's wounded cases. And there are some data based on which we are making analysis and show that the targeting was very indiscriminate and intentional because the geography is very extensive, large. The depth of the targeting is various, from frontline villages to the forest towns and villages, including capital city Stepanakert, and today we already know that they targeted very accurately, targeted the building of the emergency service, which is purely humanitarian service. It means that Azerbaijan is doing war crimes since 27, but on the recent days it's much more obvious and it's harder. And yesterday's attack against all civilians in Martuni and including journalists is also a serious example of that intent of Azerbaijan.
Okay, and as you said, so you talk about war crimes and about the fact that it's not distinguishing military and civilians, and according to the humanitarian law, armed forces of both sides must distinguish between combatants and civilians. And I just have a question. We know that there is the law of the humanitarian law, but are there consequences for one of the side that is violating the humanitarian law? Will there be any consequences, or will it stay unpunished? Because we know that in general in those kind of wars, few states sometimes until now have a punishment. They remain unpunished.
Actually, there are some mechanisms by international law, but they are not so strict and direct, unlike the domestic law. And for example, the main platform of reaching punishment is international criminal court, but neither Azerbaijan nor we, including Armenia, have joined international criminal court. It means that this mechanism cannot work. Theoretically, probably, but in serious crimes, there are some examples in the history and very near history too, that if international community decides, in that case they can start a separate procedure to punish war crime perpetrators. And I hope, and even I demand, that international community should pay enough attention to these crimes, should prevent those crimes, because international community has both responsibility but also levers for that. But besides, after this war, international community should make all the efforts to check all the details, to study all the details, and to punish the criminals, including President Aliyev.
And we talk about the international community, but so your one part of your work is also to make those information reachable for international community, right? So far, do you have any reactions or any move from the international community, or for now they remain silent?
Not direct reactions, but there are some public reactions that I saw somewhat. I'm not satisfied, frankly saying. There are some objective, some balanced reactions, but I would say that it's not enough. At least many and very large human rights organizations didn't respond. And the other political intergovernmental organizations mostly responded with artificial parity, just stating and directing their statements to both sides with artificial balance. But it's unacceptable because everyone knows, and great powers and great organizations have the mechanisms to check who started the war. Because, for example, they have satellites. It's very easy to check that Azerbaijan started the war, but even very simple logic shows that Azerbaijan started the war. There are lots of proofs on that. And if they know that, they should not keep artificial parity. They should address their statements and their demands to Azerbaijan. And also, there are already many proofs of war crimes and targeting civilians indiscriminately and intentionally. In that case, it's the top responsibility of the international community, including human rights community, to respond properly.
And then the last question. Some people from the international community say that, even media, say that the number of casualties will grow if it continues this way, and it will become maybe, it might, if nothing is done, it might become the Syrian scenario, where we have many civilian casualties if nothing is done to stop, according to what will happen next.
Syrian scenario is very different in terms of the context of the war, geopolitics, etc. Because here we have two regular armies. Though Azerbaijani army is very hatred-oriented army, doesn't keep the international humanitarian law, but it's regular army. And there is a government there which is responsible for everything done here, etc. But for sure, in terms of consequences, I guess that if it's going on so, humanitarian crisis will become humanitarian disaster with serious consequences in terms of casualties, in terms of internally displaced persons, infrastructure damages, etc., etc. And it will be both in Artsakh but also in Azerbaijan, because there is a large-scale war, and Azerbaijan also uses civilian infrastructures and population to protect or to actually also to target its own civilian population too.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beglaryan, for this talk. Thank you for watching and continue to follow CivilNet as we give new updates from Stepanakert of the situation here.